Hello, and welcome to Odds on Premier League Match Day 18. Before Christmas, we have a new match day, and we have already some comments about Liverpool Man United. Very disappointing game, especially for Liverpool fans. Tom Rennie and also Man City dropping points. Perhaps there is a chance this year to see another champion.
I mean, let's not go wild, but yeah, it was a frustrating one last week for putting bets on. 2-0 up, Palace were in the 75th minute, or City were against Palace. So hopefully, if you could, you cashed out at 2-0 and you made some money there. But I mean, Liverpool not scoring a goal. I still can't believe that game was as bad as it was, and Liverpool didn't create a good chance in the game to boot. So yeah, didn't see that coming. Not many did. We'll try and do better this week.
Only Trent Alexander-Arnold looked a bit sharp because Núñez or Diaz, they were appalling in that game. Well, let's talk a lot about the Premier League. Of course, it's Christmas period. That means Premier League. Press the like, subscribe, and we are ready. Let's go on with the show. And of course, let me remind you that we have a special welcome bonus with 1xBet 130%. Use the promo code Oddspedia YouTube in the link. Tom, first game this match day is going to be across 4 days from Thursday to Sunday. Crystal Palace Brighton is the first game. One of my favorite pictures of this Premier League was Roy Hodgson celebrating the equalizer in the last minute, just laughing at Guardiola's desperation in the sidelines. It was a really funny picture with Hodgson, of course, over 70s and not getting thrilled by the great draw Crystal Palace got against Man City, but at home they are quite bad. 4 consecutive defeats at home. Let's see if Brighton can win.
I actually think their terrible home form is one of the most extraordinary things of the entire season, because Selhurst Park is a place that generates great atmosphere. They have players who you can get behind. I mentioned to you before, when you go to big stadiums like kind of West Ham or something and there's no football, the atmosphere can fall so flat. But at Crystal Palace, it's the opposite. It's a very small stadium and they have skillful electric players like Elise and Eze. They get the ball, they run at you, and they look really impressive. So I'm really surprised they've not been able to harness the power of Selhurst Park this season. And for that reason, I don't think you can go for a Crystal Palace victory here. The form is wretched at home this year. 8 games, just the 1 victory, 5 losses in total, 4 defeats in a row, just 7 goals scored. And yes, they played well in their last home game against Liverpool, but in the end, they found a way to lose it. And I think that's a really crucial point here with Crystal Palace. I don't think they'll get relegated this year because of reasons previously established, but they find ways to lose games, and that must be incredibly frustrating for their supporters and their manager. In terms of Brighton and Hove Albion, I think the good news for them here, even though they played on Sunday, so it's still a relatively tight turnaround, is they're getting to play a match here without having played on the Thursday, then to the Saturday or Sunday, onto the Thursday, onto the weekend. Or at the very least, Crystal Palace have had an equally leg-tiring match a few days previous, that being the game we mentioned against Manchester City. So that will level the playing field a little bit more for Brighton, who have struggled with the Thursday-Sunday turnaround. Not amazingly so. They're not in the relegation zone or anything like that, but I think they would probably have another 5 to 6 points more than they currently do if they weren't in European football this year. And their away record of 4 defeats and 3 victories, just 1 win in their last 5, suggests that they have found it a struggle, plus still so many injuries for them, most notably Ansu Fati and Pervis Estupiñán and Julio Encisa we've not seen all season. It's clearing up a little bit, but still plenty of players missing for them. How's this game go? I think you have to, though it didn't come in last week for the first time all season, go back to backing both teams to score. And for me, I'm going to go with Brighton and Hove Albion. I think they have the beating of Crystal Palace in the Eagles-Seagulls derby. Brighton win and both teams to score brings you in at 4, which is 3-1, which is really, really nice looking at Brighton's away form this season. And even the losses that Palace have had, they have nicked a goal here and there, despite going on to lose matches. So Brighton win, both teams to score. I'd also look here at a relatively low scoring match. Again, I'm always looking for the 2-1 threshold, which is 3 on the decimals. Brighton win an under 3.5 goals in this match. That brings you in at 1-0, 2-0, and 2-1. You get that at 3. That's really nice. And the other score I like here is that Palace will be very negative, and I think they might be able to control this match for a half. But as games have gone on, Brighton have got stronger, Palace have got weaker. If you take the Man City game out of it, that's the trend, certainly at Selhurst Park, and certainly the trend for Brighton matches. Draw at halftime, Brighton win at full time, 5.5. 3 nice bets there.
Good one. Brighton failed to score for the very first time in the Premier League against Arsenal on Sunday. So back on the both teams to score. That could be a very good idea. Marco is asking you, what team do you think will be the winner this season of the Premier League, Tom?
Oh, I would still go with Manchester City. I would still pick them. I think Arsenal look really good and consistent, if not as spectacular as last season. I think Liverpool have got so much room for improvement, but there's no way at this point I'm going to bet against Man City, and I wouldn't advise anyone do so at this point.
Well, in the mix, we still have Aston Villa. Our next game is Aston Villa Sheffield United. It was a key game, great victory against Brentford, coming back in the last minutes. And when they are playing at home, of course, we have to back them. 15 consecutive Premier League victories at home since the 18th of February. And they are playing Sheffield United. So no doubts here.
Oh, no doubts at all. They are the best team at home in the Premier League this season, up against the worst team away from home in the Premier League this season. I mean, look, where's the money going to go? Of course, it's going to go on an Aston Villa win. The odds are incredibly low for that. So how do we find some value? Well, look at some of these victories for Aston Villa this season. If you look beyond the really tight victories against Arsenal and Man City, there's a 4 against West Ham. There's a 6 in there against Brighton. 3 against Luton. They've scored plenty of goals this season at home. 3 against Fulham as well. So, got to look at the handicap markets. But also, I like the goals scored market here because Villa have been really free scoring at home. 25 goals scored at Villa Park this season. Nobody has scored more home goals than them. So, Villa win and they score 4 goals in this match. Brings you in at 3.25. That's how you make some money here. Backing Aston Villa to win. You can also pick a -3 handicap, which is slightly more daring because it brings in a Sheffield United goal, which will just make your odds a little bit longer. So if Sheffield United score 1, they've got to score 4. It's slightly riskier, but a -3.5 handicap brings you in at 4.5. So there's 2 nice bets there going after a Villa big victory. And I think you have to go Villa big victory because all the stars are going to be fit. Watkins is fit, Diaby is fit, Leon Bailey's been terrific. All the attacking players are there, and they win this game big.
Well, Aston Villa Asian handicap -2.5 for Corello. Of course, you have to go for Asian handicap if you want to make some money. Aston Villa to win pays very little, only 1.24. This is the only game on a Friday evening. Let's go with the games we have on Saturday. First one, great game, West Ham Man United, with West Ham shining at home, beating Freiburg first and then Wolves. You must be very happy, Tom, and they are only 1 point behind Man United, 4 victories in the last 6. So these are really good numbers. Man United, very negative. The proposal at Anfield perhaps was the only way to grab a point. I was very impressed, I have to say, by Varane. He was great in that game. And also about Amrabat, how poor he is. He's not, a Belgian league player or something like this. You cannot play Premier League like Amrabat as a number 5. It was appalling.
No, I'd agree. Massively underwhelming since coming in, and maybe shows why United waited so long in the transfer window to make that move, because they thought something better would emerge, and for some reason it didn't, and Amrabat is really struggling. Look, in terms of West Ham, the 2 victories they've got at home in the last week, really impressive, that the Freiburg win and the Wolves win. And what's interesting about West Ham is that they really aren't getting out of second gear in games. And when they do for a few minutes against Wolves, when they got the second, they just backed away from it and said to Wolves, score a goal. If you don't score a goal, we've won this game. And they went on to score a third and win it quite comfortably on the counter-attack. They're very good at being 1 or 2 goals up at home, West Ham, because they'll absorb and break. And when you've got Paquetá, Kudus and Bowen in the form that 3 are in right now, you kind of got to back West Ham to score goals. And for the first time this week. Maybe the Paqueta on the left thing did start to work a little bit. I'm still not the biggest fan, but it does look like it's getting some rhythm. The only doubt about West Ham is they're playing on Wednesday night in the Carabao Cup quarterfinals away at Anfield. As ever, West Ham play more games than any other team in the country. They have found a way to handle that over the last 2 or 3 years, but that does give a little opening here. The issue with Manchester United is they play exactly the same way as West Ham. Neither of these teams will want the ball. I think West Ham will be happy to cede it to Manchester United, and in that way, they do struggle. It's worth noting there's still several injuries for Manchester United as well. At least 12 going into the weekend. Maguire, Malacia, Casemiro, Martinez. Dallo is now suspended. Christian Eriksen, Mason Mount might well come back for this one, but likely not. Victor Lindelof, Bruno Fernandes will make his return. Martial's got some sort of virus, we are told. Jadon Sancho missing. So a lot of players missing. And for West Ham, they've had a relatively clean bill of health all season. It's only Mikel Antonio that's missing. So how's this game going to go? The one thing I feel very confident of is you ain't going to see many goals. West Ham are not a free-flowing, rip-you-apart team, and neither are Manchester United. It feels to me like the first goal goes on to win this game. Of the two, I would pick West Ham United. And frankly, at 2.58, that might be worth just taking. That might well drift up to 2-1 as we get towards this game on Saturday. West Ham to win on those odds at home. It's already gone up since I looked at that this morning. I'd also double that up with the under 2.5 to make some serious money. West Ham to win this, and under 2.5 goals, 1-0 or 2-0 victory, 6.5. Very, very high. They won this game 1-0 last year. They have a good record at home against Manchester United. And I just don't see many goals in this Manchester United team. The other thing I would just pick out here is the draw at 3.6. 1-1 draw, 0-0 draw, two very risk-averse managers. I wouldn't avoid that at all. But a West Ham win and the underscore line feels likely here.
Yeah, the under looks very clear, as Albert Circulescu is telling us. Also, he said Amrabat could help Sheffield United, not Manchester. That's a good point.
And they have Ollie Norwood. How dare you besmirch Ollie Norwood, saying he's not as good as Sofian Amrabat? Come on.
Well, and Rabat, he did a good World Cup. That's why he got his ticket to Manchester. But that's it. Andrios, under 3 goals. You mentioned that the odds are going up for West Ham. Now it's 2.6. I'm checking in the Oddspedia website. So if we wait a little bit and you feel like backing West Ham, perhaps you should wait a little bit and see if the odds go a little bit higher. Next game is Fulham. Burnley, we have Fulham to win 1.75, which could be appealing to me because they thrashed West Ham and Forest before they lost to Newcastle, and because Burnley, Tom, they look like hopeless. I think this season it looks like there is not going to be any battle for the salvation. Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United look hopeless. That's why this 1.75 could be interesting.
I mean, it's too low for a Fulham win. I mean, it might be a game to put in your accumulator, absolutely, but I don't know whether I'd bet on that directly. I mean, look at the Fulham results at home in recent times. Spectacular victories against West Ham and Nottingham Forest, both by 5-0. They scored 3 in the game before that. So they know how to score goals right now at Craven Cottage. The issue is that going into this one, they've got a suspension for Raul Jimenez, who actually has looked pretty good the last couple of weeks, suspended for his sending off against Newcastle last week. It means Vinicius comes in up front, and a firing Raul Jimenez is a top quality £50 million striker. We've not seen him for a long time, but we are seeing him now. Carlos Vinicius remains a perennial also-ran substitute in the Premier League. So there's a variable in that. I mean, in terms of Burnley, I won't back them. You can't back them, but I will just say their away record is actually more respectable than their home record. 5 points won, a draw at Brighton last time out. 1 victory on the road this season. Look, it's still not great, but it is certainly respectable for a newly promoted team to have picked up a few points on the road this season. I think go with Fulham to win handsomely. A couple of bets bring you in above the threshold. One is Fulham to score 3 or more goals. That is a 3-1, 3-2 if you don't feel confident in their defense. But I feel very confident still in their offense, plus the Burnley defense is very poor. Fulham to score 3 goals in this game without a scoreline brings you in at 3.5. That feels like a surefire win to me, so I'll be taking that. If you want to pick a winner, go with Fulham, pick a 1.5 handicap. That brings you in at 2.88. It's lower than the goal threshold that I mentioned already, but it's a really safe bet in terms of betting on this game. Just under the threshold we want, but I feel pretty confident Fulham are going to win this handsomely.
Well, Fulham a straight win for Colero, Fulham and both teams to score for Albert. Next game, this one, there could be a surprise. Luton Town and Newcastle, because Newcastle away form has been concerning this season. The last 3 games were defeats. Finally, they are not playing also European football, so perhaps they can focus on this game. And because all the big teams, Tom, they've suffered against Luton, especially when they play at home. So there won't be a walk in the park for Newcastle, that's for sure.
No, don't discount Luton at 5.5 as well. It's not going to be my tip because I fancy Newcastle to win this game. But at 5.5, Luton are going to beat somebody unexpectedly at home at some point. It could possibly be this game. I don't think so. It's not where my money is going. But if your gut tells you that, these are really good odds for a team that are always in games. And the way they beat Crystal Palace a few weeks ago, they hang in there and get the win. They hang in there and get the win. They may well do that in this game. But for me, it's not going to happen. Why? Because Newcastle's away form is a little bit misleading. They've had the Champions League, which they obviously struggled in and got knocked out. The injury list has been enormous for Newcastle. They've not had a great deal of rotation in their team. There was a 4 or 5 week run there where it was the same team over and over and over again, which can't be done with a game every 3-4 days. No Tonali, no Pope, no Murphy, no Barnes, no Willock, no Anderson, no Fabian Schär picked up an injury last week. There's some doubts about 1 or 2 others as well, though I think Kieran Trippier should be all right to return. Of course, they've got Carabao Cup on the Tuesday, so could have been some injuries we don't know about there. But it's still a lot of players out, though Sven Botman coming back in is a really big boost for Newcastle. Plus, they've got the Isak Wilson switcheroo, which they did so well this season. For Luton, it's worth mentioning Tom Lockyer suffered that cardiac arrest last week on the field. Captain, defender, really important player for them, linchpin of their 3-man defense when they played that way. So to lose him is it's terrible for them on the football side of things, but also emotionally, I'm sure, very draining for a lot of these players. So, I think they'll compete. They always compete, but I think they'll go on to lose. I love, as you know, a group bet. They often come in tight games. Newcastle to win this 1-0, 2-0 or 2-1 brings you in at 2.88. I'll be taking that this weekend. I wouldn't touch the 1.7, the 2.7, whatever it is for them just to win. 2.88 for Newcastle to win those scorelines. Really nice. Also, I'm going to say something wild here. I saw this bet, and this is just pure gut, but the odds are so extraordinary that I'm looking at it. Luton Town have been leading in games recently because of a really strong first half, or at least been level because of a really strong first half. I'm looking at the Arsenal and Man City game specifically. But then they've faded as the game has gone on, and the favourite has gone on to win it. Look at this. Luton to be winning at halftime, and Newcastle to be winning at full time. That's Luton nick a lead, Newcastle come on strong, make some changes and win it. 23. 20. Now, look, I'm not saying do this, right? This is not a guaranteed sure thing. This is a wild one. But that, to me, looked mad. Because we have seen this happen with Luton at home against big teams. They'll start strong and energetic, and they'll obviously fade. And Newcastle can make changes. 23 is 22-1. That is mind-blowing. So I'm going to put a couple of quid on that. And if it comes in, I'll be gloating about this next we record. You could also look at a draw at halftime and Newcastle go on to win. That brings you in at 4.5. So there's some nice ways that Newcastle win a tight match.
All right. Corello is going for both teams to score. Actually, if Luton is leading at halftime and Newcastle win at full time, you have guaranteed for sure both teams to score. Well, Luton Town Bournemouth game was postponed due to this cardiac heart problem for the captain. Bournemouth rested. Going to Nottingham is the next game. Forest Bournemouth with the away team really informed. So this one could be a tricky one for Forest. Bournemouth, they are slightly favorites. Still, the odds are good, 2.58. Forest, they are in a really bad form. I read that Nuno Espiritu Santo could come to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, got sacked in Saudi Arabia, didn't he, the last few weeks? So he is available and ready to come in. I also saw Julian Lopetegui and 1 or 2 others. The usual names that get linked with every job in the Premier League these days. Everyone's trying to make some money. Look, Nottingham Forest are in big trouble. They are in big trouble right now. I don't quite know why, if I'm honest with you, compared to the start of the season. To have lost 3 straight home games has really surprised me. Look, Tottenham maybe not, but the Everton performance, I worked on that game and I thought they were dismal. They didn't look creative enough. I know they've lost Taiwo Awoniyi, but they've still got Gibbs White and Elanga, who's played great at times this season. Creative players who should be able to score for them. That's not happening. The midfield pairing that looked impressive a few weeks ago is suddenly looking a bit leggy. Defensively, I like this Murillo they've got at centre-half, but I like him more as a central midfielder. I don't think he's much of a defender, and I think having an amateur at centre-half is costing them. Plus, both goalkeepers they're using are having terrible seasons. Couldn't catch a cold. So there are some issues there, but I still would have expected them to win more games, certainly at home, than they have in the last few weeks. In terms of Bournemouth, you know, we've got to give some credit to Andoni Iraola because he has taken a few weeks to try and... Well, yeah, we tried to... I think that what he has done is had a real nice run of fixtures. And what really helps when you're down the bottom is having a player in goal-scoring form. And in Dominic Solanke right now, they've got one of the best players in the league. Like, he is scoring goals in every single game. And the way Iraola wants to play, it needs that guy. Like, I don't think Bournemouth would be succeeding if they had Chris Wood up front like Forest do, or Rasmus Højlund up front like Man United do. They've got someone who does everything for the team. He can run the channels. He can hold the ball up. He can turn on the half and take somebody on. He takes the chances when they come. They've got an extraordinary player. I think that's a key part of what Bournemouth are doing. Plus, I think defensively, they have looked more organised in the last couple of weeks. I do think Iraola, the first few weeks, tried to go all-out attack and then was a bit like, oh, no, we can't do that. And so he has gone more cautious. He has gone more defensive because he knows on the break, with the players they have, Solanke included, Tavernier, Semenyo, they have players who can really destroy you on the counter. And that's been really impressive. So I think he has changed and adapted and learned a bit about the Premier League, and that has been to Bournemouth's benefit. And you've only got to go on the form guide here. There's no money in a Forest win for you. And I think Bournemouth, at the moment, 3 straight victories away from home. I think you've got to look at it again. And a Bournemouth win straight up at 2.58. Take it. Take it. Really, really nice. They've won 3 in a row at home against a team who have lost 3 in a row at home. You've got to follow that. If you want to bring it up a little bit, you don't really need to. But if you want to, you can take both teams to score on Bournemouth win. That brings you in at 4.5. I quite fancy that. If you fancy Forest, the only way they win is to score. So you can take Forest, both teams to win. That brings you in at 5. So I see goals in this match. I'm personally going to pick Bournemouth, and I'll take them straight up to win.
Well, we have Tyson and Mungia telling us that this one is a tricky game. Indeed, there could be a tricky one. And Andrios is going for the cautious one. Bournemouth double chance, 1.47. That could be a good one, actually, for an ACCA. Also a tricky one. Perhaps the surprise of the match day could be Tottenham Everton. Everton, they are so dangerous now. Everton to win is 4.2 and 4 consecutive victories without conceding a single goal. I'm not sure if Spurs got better recently after the last 2 games with victories, Tom, or we shouldn't trust them too much.
I wouldn't trust Tottenham very much at this particular moment. I do think the injury situation clearing up has helped them massively, clearly. But there are still players missing. James Maddison, Rodrigo Bentancur, real top quality players. Mickey van der Ven. So it's not cleared up completely, but certainly there are more players now than there were a few weeks ago. I think Ibasuma being suspended for that stupid red card last week may well cost them in this game. In terms of Everton, really impressive. They're not doing anything different. They are doing the Sean Dyche blueprint, but I think there's a belief in it now that maybe there wasn't a few weeks ago. Calvert-Lewin has come back and played really well. He holds the ball up really well. Doucouré, though he came off last week, has been terrific. I think it's 11 goals in 30 games, something like that for Doucouré. Dwight McNeil has had a brilliant run of form, looks really good on the wing. They're scoring from corners, which is Sean Dyche's plan A, score from a corner, build from there. It's effective. And, the deep ball to Tarkowski, deep ball to Onana. When they deliver that corner to the back post like Burnley used to do, and the land of the giants are all running in, every team in the world would be in trouble if that happens. And Tottenham may well be in trouble here. The extraordinary thing for me here is you mentioned the form. It's not just the form you mentioned, which is absolutely right. It's the away form for Everton, which is incredible. 16 points away from home this season. 5 victories. Look at the teams they've beaten in the last few weeks. Beat West Ham 1-0 without conceding. Not easy to do. They went to Nottingham Forest when Forest were, at that time, we thought, they're a good home team. That result is the one which changes our view on Nottingham Forest. Everton won there incredibly comfortably. They went to Burnley. Look, they are rubbish at home, but Everton could have won that 7 or 8-0. Destroyed them in that game. It was brilliant. So I think you have to look at those odds. 4.2 for a team that have won 4 in a row away from home, who play exactly the same style as, say, West Ham, who went to Tottenham and won a couple of weeks ago. Low block, score from corners, hit them on the break. Just do what West Ham did, and this game is going to be won. I'm taking that. 4.2 for the league's form team to win against the league's chaos team. I think that's absolutely insane. So Everton win 4.2. I'm taking it. If you do fancy a Tottenham win, you got to go both teams to score because they will concede against Everton. So Tottenham winning both teams to score brings you in at the 2-1 threshold. But for me, Everton straight up take the win.
Well, Everton +1 for Albert, a cautious one. Everton, they are playing League Cup quarterfinals. I don't know, against Fulham, if this could have an impact on this game or they will do turnover, no? Probably.
I mean, look, it will have an impact because Dominic Calvert-Lewin often can't play kind of a couple of games in a week. It depends what time the Beto Calvert-Lewin switch happened in that game. There could be injuries and variables we don't know about. But even if they're played 2 games, they still haven't got to think about the amount of games the European teams have played. And Everton are still 6 or 7 or 8 games behind, like Villa or Newcastle or West Ham. So they should still have plenty of freshness in their legs to play a game on the Tuesday and then play again on the Saturday.
Well, let's see if Richarlison, for instance, scores again. He had found the net in the last 2 games, of course, former Everton player. Let's see. And the game of the games, Tom, we've arrived to this point of Liverpool. Arsenal, the 2 title contenders, although Mourinho said Man City had 51% of chance of winning the Premier League, Liverpool 49, and Arsenal, they don't have a chance. It's not going to happen. But, they are back on top of the table after beating Brighton. They look very solid. They will be much more dangerous than Man United, for sure. And Liverpool was a bit concerning, the lack of ideas, especially, as I mentioned at the beginning, from Luis Diaz, from Nunez. Only Alexander-Arnold looked doing something different, something fresh for this team. How do you see? This one is so tough.
I would also say that Manchester United did a terrific job closing that game down. A really, really good job. That was a great defensive performance. That was top-end, tactical, defensive-minded play that Erik ten Hag is really good at. And Liverpool needed to find answers to it, and they didn't have them. You're right to point that out as well. I think that not having the kind of deep-line creativity of Alexis McAllister to move the ball forward at pace, stop Liverpool in transition, to be really technical about it, but beyond that, they should have done a lot better. I think McAllister should be back for this game at the weekend. The home form is still spectacular as well for Liverpool. I mean, let's get that right. They've played 8 games this season at home. They've won 7 of them, drawn 1, 21 scored, 5 conceded, and they've thrashed some really decent teams this season as well. So at the moment, that is the anomaly. That's the sore thumb. That's the standout. It isn't the pattern. You've got to follow the pattern. But of course, the other pattern here is that Arsenal away from home have been brilliant. Only Spurs and Man City have done better on the road than them. 5 victories, but 2 in the last 5 would be a concern. This is so tight and all results are possible. So you've got to think about how the 2 teams play. If Liverpool don't score in the opening 25 minutes, as we saw against Man United, I can see this being quite a similar matchup. And Arsenal have grown stronger and stronger as games have gone on. Who's got the better defense out of these 2 teams? I think it is Arsenal. I think their defensive setup is better. I think Declan Rice is going to be the outstanding midfielder on the pitch. And I think that I might well take Liverpool's front 3 over Arsenal's as a group. But as an individual, I might pick Bukayo Saka right now as the outstanding player of that group. I know Salah, sure, but Bukayo Saka does so much for Arsenal. And Salah at the moment just seems to be drifting out of games, scoring a goal and drifting out of them. So I think that might be an issue. My gut tells me that Arsenal are going to win. And Arsenal at 3.04 is really good. A double your money bet. To be fair, on a gut call, it'll be the same for either team. I don't think it's going to be a thrilling goal fest. I think the first goal might well go on to win this game with the second goal late on. Both are brilliantly built to score the first goal, sit back and counter. So I'll take Arsenal to win at 3. There's also a really nice group bet here of likely score lines. Arsenal 1-0, 2-0 or 2-1 brings you in at 4.33. The reason I'm doing it is because I think Arsenal are perfectly set up to go into a game like this and win. I think the first goal is going to be absolutely crucial in this match. And I think you look at results like when they've lost against Villa, they've lost against Newcastle this season, Arsenal. Not scoring that first goal was the most important thing. They get it here, they go on to win it. I'd back them to get it. I also quite like, if you think Liverpool are going to win it, things being level for a long, long time, and then they score late. Again, low-scoring win either way. Draw at halftime, Liverpool win late, brings you in at 6. Again, that's really high for a Liverpool win. If they don't score in the first 20, they won't score till the last 10. So I like that if the Liverpool are going to win it at 6, but for me, Arsenal win it on a group bet. Also, don't discount another draw. It may well be another 0-0, folks, I'm sorry to say. 3.75 just for the draw is also quite nice. But my gut tells me Arsenal win a low-scoring match.
Well, last season we saw both games were thrillers, actually 2-2 and 3-2. So you are going on the other direction on a low scoring game. And actually, most of our audience are telling us the same, going for the under. It will be a tight one, perhaps a draw, Arsenal low scoring game. But we see the hype on Arsenal. Most people are backing Arsenal. I'm surprised, to be honest, because Liverpool at home, this is Anfield. Well, let's see. With Man City not playing this match day, they are in Arabia with Kevin De Bruyne, by the way, back in training. It will be interesting to see if Arsenal wins. For instance, they go to 42 and Arsenal is 34. That's a big gap. Well, Tom, we have one more game for Christmas Eve. On Sunday, we have Wolves-Chelsea, with Chelsea winning, but not spectacular, 2-0 against Sheffield United. And Wolves, they are very bad away from home, but at home, they are pretty decent. 3 wins, 3 draws in the last 6 games. This is a tough one. I wouldn't touch Chelsea with only 2.0 odds.
No, anything that's not 2-1 or above, don't touch Chelsea, because they are so unreliable. I know we got them right last week with the victory, but they still didn't play particularly well, it's got to be said. They're one to avoid, certainly on ACCAs. They're going to destroy a lot of coupons across the weekend. I went to Wolves the weekend against West Ham, and I've got to say I was incredibly disappointed with them. I've seen some great performances from Wolves this season, but beyond the disallowed goal for Sarabia, they barely got through on West Ham. There was no rhythm in the way they played. They conceded some very poor goals from a defensive perspective, and there's a lot of improvement to be had. I really like Matheus Cunha. I think he's been terrific this season. He's not got a great deal of composure, but there's so few players who can carry the ball as brilliantly as he does through the thirds, and I think that's something they've got to get more out of, Wolverhampton Wanderers, this season. I was disappointed as well, and from a Wolves perspective, that we're still trying to kind of wait for Pedro Neto to come back. I thought he might come back last week. There's talk he might come back for this one. With Pedro Neto in the team, with Sarabia and Cunha as a 3, that's the trio who can score goals. So hopefully, for their perspective, he'll be back for this game. In terms of Chelsea, I mean, what do you say at this point? They are a mid-table team. They play like a mid-table team. They might look good at some moments, look bad at other moments. The Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Gallagher midfield hasn't quite worked. Jackson up front hasn't quite worked. Mudryk on the wing hasn't quite worked. Sterling on the other side hasn't quite worked. Apart from Cole Palmer, there's not really a success story at Chelsea this season. And away from home, they've been pretty dismal, pretty ineffective. The 2-0 loss against Everton, 2-1 loss at Man United, walloped by Newcastle before that. So it's 3 away defeats in a row. Wolves unbeaten in 5 at home with 3 victories in that time. It's 3.92 for them to win. I mean, let's not go wild here. The odds are really good for a team that have beaten good teams at home this season against an unpredictable team who have lost last 3 in a row. The form guide tells me one thing, and I don't argue with the form guide. Wolves win. Take it.
Indeed, or draw no bet for Wolves, as Corello is telling us. If you are more cautious, so if you get a draw, you will get your money back. Well, this is the last game, a strange date, by the way, to play on Christmas Eve in England. Wolves, Chelsea. This is it, Tom, for our show in match day 18 with that Liverpool Arsenal, of course, standing out. Tell me your safe bet.
Safe bet this week is Aston Villa. Aston Villa, the best team at home in the Premier League this season against Sheffield United. They're going to win this game. So safe bet Aston Villa.
That looks pretty safe. And the ACCA?
3-team ACCA this week. I'm going a bit more cautious after Liverpool, of all teams, let me down last week at home against Manchester United. So it's a treble with Aston Villa winning against Sheffield United, Fulham beating Burnley, and Newcastle going to Luton and winning. That's the variable that brings it up to 3.68.
That Newcastle victory is not going to be easy. Luton, well known by its airport, of course. Well, Tom, thank you. Merry Christmas. Next video will be the mighty Boxing Day. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.